Why, hello and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I'm your host and guide, Zollin Ironshield, and today I want to answer the question, why has Lotro survived through all the years with all these other couple MMOs and compared to newer engines and newer systems, right? Why has it survived this whole time through thick and thin, through people telling everyone it's going to die, it's going to this, and now it's growing and it's getting bigger than ever again, and why I believe it'll continue to be a great game into the many years to come, even with certain other companies claiming that they're going to make Lord of the Rings MMOs. We'll see. Be cool if they're good ones, but I'm pretty sure Lord of the Rings Online, they've got what it takes to survive and to give us content that we enjoy as Tolkien fans. So let's break it down. I did a recent video on this too. It really comes down to a few things. Lord of the Rings Online knows what they're good at. I did a video on this already. Knows what they're good at. But let's break it down even more when it comes to the engines, okay? So the engine for the Lord of the Rings Online MMO is very old. It's very similar to World of Warcraft's engine and stuff, which is why some people in the past were like, oh, is Lotro a World of Warcraft copy? It is not. If you're someone who's played World of Warcraft and Lotro like I have, you know it's not. It's quite self-explanatory. It's like, is an orange and apple. It's about the same. They're both round. Yeah, that's true. They both are fruit. Yeah, but they're not the same. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of the point. And they're both good, by the way. Mind you, they're both good. So when it comes to the engines, though, and the breaking down of things, it matters greatly how things are implemented, right? People, when we play video games as gamers, this is my opinion, of course. Please leave your comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think. But when I play a video game, I want several things. I want to feel a little bit of immersion if it's an MMO. I want to feel the story. I want to hear the music, the ambience. Music for me is extremely important in a video game. Storytelling is also extremely important to me in a video game. And then if it's got good gameplay, it's got gameplay that I personally enjoy. Now again, MMOs are not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I understand that, guys. I totally get that. That's why there's not a lot of, like, the genres of MMOs, you know, ebb and flow through time, right? They're definitely not as popular right now as they were 10 years ago. Maybe that'll change in the next few years. Who knows? Maybe it'll get less. I don't know. It definitely feels like a lot of gamers were going towards more fast-paced games. And yes, I play games like Valorant, League of Legends, you know, Cycle Frontier, like games like that. They're really fast paced, really quick, you know, super fast reflexes. I love those games. I think they're really fun. But do I like a nice old fashioned classic MMO where I can just sit down and play a game and enjoy myself? Well, yes, I do. I really like that I can just lay back and go through the world of Middle Earth. There's nothing strenuous I have to do. I can make it strenuous if I want to put some role play on myself or try to get something done in the game or a raid or, you know, go to the PvP zone. But I could just explore Middle Earth. I can just walk around the Shire if I want to. I can go to Rivendell, right? That is just such a nice thing. And that's like the best thing why Lotro is so good at that. They're so good at that. This is also something that World of Warcraft is very good at. This is also something that Guild Wars 2 is very good at. Final Fantasy is very good at. RuneScape, all right? Now, RuneScape is a very different feel than, I would call that like the classic MMO, right? RuneScape, because of the time and the genre of its engine, right? And it's more of almost like a 2-3D, right? Look, don't exactly know how to call that down look, you know. But let's just talk about the time frame of those couple years of the World of Warcraft, you know, Lotro, Star Wars Galaxies, if you remember that one. And then Final Fantasy a little bit later in Guild Wars 2. And then, of course, there's a couple other good ones here and there. Terra Online, there's a lot of MMOs. There's a bunch of them. I know I'm missing like 30 right now. But the point is, the bottom line is it comes down to, it's in the pudding. Did they survive the test of time? People always claim that something is dying. That's, you know, you all know those people on the Reddit forums and stuff. This game's dying. This game's dying. This game's dying. By the way, if you say that to 30 things, there's a high chance you're going to get a lot of them right, because that's just the thing. Games die, right? That's just how it goes. But there are a lot that they got wrong. Like, for example, Lotro. Lotro, 5-6 years ago, people were saying it was totally dead. It was totally going to die. And it had such a big fan base and such a dedicated crew, and they sold it to a new company, that it's flourishing again. It's a great game, right? Same thing with like, you know, a lot of people left WoW from some stuff they did, but I don't think WoW's gonna die. Granted, it brought a lot of people to Lotro because people are like, oh, this game's kind of similar to WoW, but it's Lord of the Rings. And it is. There are similarities. You can see the similarities between games even over that 10-year period, where it comes down to storytelling. It comes down to they care about their individual art style. This is a big one for me. A lot of people are like, oh, the graphics are old, right? People say that about World of Warcraft, or they'll say that about Lotro, or they'll say that even about Guild Wars 2 or, you know, Final Fantasy. And they're newer, obviously. Final Fantasy Guild Wars 2 are like 5-6 years younger than both of the other two. But the point is, they both focus on their art style, right? Some of them, like, for example, Lotro, it has some realism in the art. You know what something is. That's a leaf, that's a fish, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's a pretty art style. Where World of Warcraft kind of went for the more that cartoony classic World of Warcraft big crazy buildings look, which is cool. World of Warcraft looks awesome too. And obviously, as long as you're updating textures and stuff, it kind of gives you that always that immersion and feeling as our stuff advances, right? And that's the thing. They learned how to transform with the times. That's the big one too, a lot of these games. And some of them figured out how to do it. Like obviously Lotro was one of the very first games to kind of pioneer as an MMO, classic MMO, pioneer a free-to-play system that was like actually free-to-play. A lot of people won't say this that in World of Warcraft, but World of Warcraft and Lotro actually were kind of like sharpening each other, like, you know, steel on steel, like sharpening, okay? WoW would never admit that, but it's obvious. If you go through all the patches, you'll see Lotro implements something that's brand new they invented. 6 months later, WoW does it. WoW would add something. A couple months later, Lotro would add it. And then other MMOs were doing this too. But it was really, really neck and neck with WoW and Lotro. And I always laugh. I always thought that was kind of, it was a good thing. It was good for both games. But again, they were evolving with the times as they went. And then, of course, more recently, Lotro just did a huge revamp of their free-to-play system to make it way better. Because back then it was a great free-to-play system, but nowadays it could seem a little bit like there were little paywalls here and there and things. They could get past, but you'd have to do a lot of grinding to get past them. So now you don't have to do those. So Lotro's really has been learning how to go with the times. And not just that, they've kind of learned how to add monetization things besides subscriptions without putting in your face like a lot of phone games do, which is horrible. So again, I keep saying it, the proof is in the pudding, people. And it's delicious because it's Tolkien pudding. You guys are like, okay, well, what are you talking? All right. Anyway, the bottom line is that you could see all these similarities in all of these games. World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings Online, Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy. Guess what they all have in common? Here's the first one. Really good music. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, really good storytelling. Okay? All right. Number 3, really good gameplay depending on what style of gameplay you like to play. Okay? So again, WoW and Lotro are a little more similar to their classic kind of WoW style. There are some differences, though. Some people made comments in a video I saw that said, oh, Lotro has, you know, universal cooldowns on their abilities. No, they don't. That's not a thing. That's a World of Warcraft thing. So there are differences there. And then obviously, of course, you know, Guild Wars has a slightly different style. You can flip between the 2 skill combos, and Final Fantasy has a little bit closer style to that. They were kind of around the same time as like the Terra Online and a bunch of those other MMOs too. And again, whenever you see a birth of a bunch of MMOs, you see the birth of the MMOs, and then a bunch of them will die. And then like 2 or 3 of them will survive. And then you have a birth of a brand new genre of MMOs. And you kind of see it like back in the last 15 years, I would say it was like every 5 to 6 years. Happened like 2 or 3 times, right? If you probably all remember, if you are, you know, in your early 20s at least, you might remember. But again, I didn't really play RuneScape and stuff. I was too young. But a lot of my friends, they're a little older than me, played that. But you can kind of see what came along with it. And they were always true to their fan base too, most of the time, which is why when games have troubles that did do good for a long time, usually it's because maybe a leadership change and then they're not being as true to their fan base. I'm not pointing out any game in particular, but that's why Lotro, always be true to your fan base because you guys are awesome about that. But yeah, that's something that now we go and we take that engine thing to finish up this video and we compare it to all the newer engines. They focus so hard on things like looking real, okay? So a lot of people, again, are like, oh, that game looks old. You know, any of these older MMOs. Why do people play them? because they're an art style and we're playing it. It's like, why do people play Pac-Man? Do you play it because of that 2D beautiful art style with the little pixels? No, you play it because it's a fun game and it's got good music and little sound effects. It's the same thing, but on, of course, nicer scale, because the visuals I think are gorgeous in Lord of the Rings Online. I also would say that I think a lot of WoW visuals are prettier. Now, Lotro is a little younger than WoW, and I think that their art style is a little nicer in my personal opinion, but I still think WoW is cool, and I don't like to try to compare it. It's like when people compare Star Wars and Star Trek, it's like, why? Just stop. It's not worth it. It's not worth the argument. They're different. That's the same thing that kind of keeps going through the times. And then you get to new engines. Again, they're trying to make it look so real that it almost takes you out of the immersion of the fantasy sometimes, because you're like, oh man, that looks real, but it's not. Well, it doesn't really totally look real, because you're trying to think it looks like a flower, right? In, like, let's say Elder Scrolls, or not Elder Scrolls, excuse me, Elden Ring. The Elder Scrolls was a great game, great music. Same thing, by the way, the different genre, but same things I'm talking about here. But when it comes to the visuals, when you look at Elden Ring, you're looking at things going, that's a cool art style. It's kind of like Dark Souls, right? Again, great games. And Elden Ring's a great game, by the way. But you're looking at that art style and you're going, oh, it looks real, right? But you're like, but you know it's not totally real because it's still just Unreal Engine 5, right? The newest. Where when you look at Lotro or WoW, you're not expecting to look at it and go, yeah, that flower looks pretty real. You're just like, oh, well, pretty. Look at that field of beautiful drawings, basically, because they're kind of like triple 2D'd flowers, right? Still looks gorgeous from far away and stuff. You might go up close and be like, yeah, that's 2D. But, you know, they just add more and more to make it more complex. It's just, but like, that's all visual arts. It's kind of cool to see the evolution of art, like visual graphics over time anyway. But that's my big thing. That's been my big pet peeve, and also I like to tell people that. I think if people don't think about that, is with visuals, is that these newer games are trying so hard to look real, even New World, that it causes, not to mention you have to have the most hardcore systems to play it, right? The newest computers, you need a $3,000, $4,000 computer to be able to play it at full, beautiful graphics, and even then you might still have lag from the server, right? Because New World, being a new game, mind you, has had major problems and major lag, and still a great game, but people complain, oh, well, Lotro has always had lag. Yeah, well, brand new massive AAA MMO with 900,000 players when it first came out had massive lag problems for months. And like, I played it too, and it was it was making CPUs crash and all this kind of stuff. And again, this isn't me just trying to rant on New World. I'm giving you a perspective of why certain games survive. Now, will New World survive? It probably. I don't know. It's not been long enough to test. It's only been out like, what, 2 years, 2.5 years since I've made this video. But Lotro's been out 16 years. I think World of Warcraft's been out, what, like 18 years? And Final Fantasy's like 11 or 12, and Guild Wars 2 is like 13. Like, some of these games, RuneScape obviously has a newer, revamped looking RuneScape, but it's been out forever too. So these are the things that keep these games going. Not only is it the fan base nostalgia, that's a big one, but what do they want to bring new people in, right? What if you want to bring new people in to these games? I still think that's possible with upgrading textures, advertising, letting people know they exist, because a lot of times you'll get younger players and friends of mine that'll be like, I had no idea this game existed. This is so cool. I would have loved to play this. You know what I'm saying? Like, even all the different new ages, right? You know, the 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds, they're like, yeah, I'll play that, you know? It's like, and the best thing about games like Lotro and stuff is that they're completely clean. You can have, you know, if you have your little niece or nephew, they can be, you know, 7 years old and they can play the game because the visuals aren't super gory. Because Elden Ring is awesome. But have you watched that game, guys? I would not let, when I have children someday, I will not let my children play that until they're at least like 10 or 11 or 12 years old. That kind of visuals. And even then, I would need to know my child and know if they could understand the difference between fake and reality, because that could give kids nightmares, okay? Lotro, it still looks cool. It could still scare kids that are maybe under 6 or 7 years old, but most children by this time in this era will see that and go, oh, it's just fun. It's just a game, right? And you can turn off certain settings to make it less gory, so there's no, you know, Yeah, that's another thing. All that could be a whole nother video all by itself. But we're not going to go into all of that though. So anyway, those are my things that I think that the differences with engines that does matter. That new engines are great, but old engines can also be great too. All right, it's just like a choo-choo train. Everyone loves an old steam engine, even though it's really, really cool to see a bullet train going 300 too. Of course, but they're both cool, right? You guys don't like trains, then that analogy doesn't make any sense for you, so I'm sorry. Yep, but proof's in the pudding, and I think that is why the majority of MMOs that are still alive today focused heavily on those things: gameplay, music, visuals, storytelling, and they stuck to what they were good at. And that is how, my friends, in my personal opinion, they're still around, and I think they will be for many more years. Because it's a niche thing. It is a niche thing. Well, MMOs, they really are. But I think there will always be a group of people that will be there for that niche thing, which means there will be able to be more content created that will make the game survive. And I think there's a lot of people. I don't think it's quite as small community as some people pointed out to be. I think we have in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands over all the MMOs, definitely, if you count them all. Because a lot of people go in between. I mean, I play a bunch of them. Of course, Lotro's my favorite one, but I go and play like 8 over the years, so we move around. Thanks, Patrons, for your support. Subscribe button. Next episode, Lotro Taylor do voiceovers in Lord of the Rings Online. Have a great day in Middle-earth, and I'll see you on the next episodes of Voice of the Rings. And check out Lotro, and maybe subscribe if I earned it. See ya.